Good morning, everyone. Today we'll go on talking about the impacts of the First World War, which actually a part of the causes of Second World War. So we're going to focus on the topic declining influence of Europe and rising influence of US and Japan. Actually, every time when we try to explain or make conclusions on the economic impacts of the war, a lot of students they will like write down their answers into something like because of the war, the economy in Europe was greatly weakened. But actually, history is not only about to tell the truth. It's not only about to tell the event or what happened and the date. I think in learning history, one more important thing is to explain things, is to tell why. So, how to answer how did First World War lead to declining influence of European powers? I think it's very important to show you guys how to answer it in a logical and critical way. So you can show different perspectives and you can explain things with sound evidence and in details. Okay, so here you can check the graph. We have two columns, one on the left side and the other on the right side. So let's fill in the blanks together to see what is a better way to explain this question. So firstly, you have to explain what happened in the war, right? So something happened in the war lead to the declining influence of Europe. So what happened in the war? During the First World War, where was the main battlefield? Of course, Europe, right? The Europe continent was the main battlefield, especially remember when we checked the Paris Peace Conference, when I tried to explain to you why the peace conference should be held in Paris. It's actually because France, they were the main battlefield, and they want the people to see around Paris and around France so they can ask for more, right? So actually, especially in France, they were the main battlefield, and so since they were the battlefield, something will be destroyed, right? So what kind of things will be destroyed? Firstly, factories. So why factories can be important? At that time, we're talking about this after the first and second industrial revolution, right? So actually factory at that time can be very important for the economic condition, because factories firstly reflecting the productivity of a country. But more importantly, it provides jobs and salary to the citizens. But now when the factories they were destroyed, of course people they have no jobs. That means a very high unemployment rate, and they have no salary. That means they don't have money for them to buy food. And also with a low productivity level, of course the country didn't have enough materials to feed their people. So next, factories, and then more importantly farmland, right? Why farmland here can be important when they were destroyed? It's because people they need food, right? So without those farmland, of course they don't get food to eat. So it will lead to some very serious social problems. And other than farmlands, more importantly, houses. Why houses can be important? It's because this is the place where people live. Imagine if you're homeless, so there's nowhere you can go. At the same time, you lose your job. At the same time, you don't have food to eat. So what will you do? Just wandering around the road and wait to die? Of course, some people will do something bad, right? They will rob for food because they have nothing to lose, right? So actually, it can cause some very serious social problems. And then the roads. Why roads can be important? Because there should be some places that they didn't really destroy by the war. They still maybe have some farmland for them. They still have some remaining factories, right? But if all the roads they were destroyed, of course that these things can't be easily transported to the place where they were in need. So this is the reason why I think these many factories, farmland, houses, and roads were destroyed And also, these will lead to some very serious social problems. Firstly, of course, the shortage of source of resources. Secondly, a very high unemployment rate. So, on the other hand, so this is about when people live in these countries and their life, what does it look like, and how did the war really destroy the economic condition or how to destroy the life of the people, like in a nation. So let's see the second part. After the war, the defeated countries, they have to pay. Remember, according to the Treaty of Versailles, that Germany, they have to pay 6.6 billion pounds as the reparation to the winning camp, right? So reparations. And the winning countries, they have to pay. So maybe we have the question here. We can stop here a little to talk about why should the winning country to pay something. They shouldn't pay reparations, right? Because after all, they won the First World War. So what they have to pay and whom they were to pay, right? So here, whom should they pay all the money or debts to? So that means they have debts, right? They borrow money from other countries to fight in the war. So which country they really was the creditor of these countries? You can see from this graph, U.S. export to Europe from 1912 to 1917, and you can see start from 1914 actually. All the Great Britain, all other European countries, and also France, they keep importing sources from US, and also they borrow money from US. So at the same time, you need to see that First World War transformed the US from a debtor to a creditor nation. What does it mean by a creditor? A creditor means when people, they borrow money from you, and you are the creditor and they are the debtor. So for US now, they're not only transformed from a debtor to a creditor, more importantly, they actually become the biggest creditor of the world. And also this is the First World War. Actually, it can be a very important turning point for the rise of US, since they become the biggest creditor after the First World War, and almost all the countries, all the European countries have to pay for US even after the First World War. So when we're back to here, the winning countries had to pay that to US, right? After you know about US situation as the biggest creditor in the world, now you can have more understanding on their relationship through this triangle, the Reparations Triangle in 1920s. So you can see this triangle actually showing the relationship among all these countries. For example, firstly, US, since they're the biggest creditor, that is the reason why Britain and France, they have to pay war debt to US. And then Germany, since they have signed the Treaty of Versailles, that is the reason why they have to pay reparations to Britain and France. And also, US, since they are always the peace lover, they want to help out people. That is the reason why actually US, they're providing loans to Germany after the First World War to help them to reconstruct their country and also pay their reparations. This graph at this stage, you just need to know and understand it, but it can be very important to explain about the situation in Europe during the Great Depression period. We're going to talk about the topic Great Depression in a short time, so you can firstly just know this graph is already enough. Next time maybe we're going to make use of it. You just keep it in your notes will be enough. Okay, last part for this topic, rising influence of US and Japan. Firstly, why US? Actually, when we try to explain US' position as the largest creditor in the world, it is already shown that US, since they are the war profiteer means someone they think the war is profitable and gain money from the war. So people always say that US is the war profiteer, and they lend money to other countries firstly to provide money for them to fight in war, and secondly after the war they provide money to them to reconstruct their country, to pay for the reparation, right? So since they were the largest creditor, that is the reason why they have a rising influence. But more importantly, US was the latecomer. Why? First World War started at 1914, but when did US join the war? Actually, they declared war in 1917, but they actually spent around half a year to their mobilization, and they really sent their troops they didn't really send their troops until 1918. So actually they just fight in the First World War less than a year. So of course they have to pay less. Of course they don't have a very huge casualties compared to other European countries because they were far away from Europe. That means since when we try to explain that the European countries, they were greatly destroyed, not only the casualties, not only they destroyed the economies, more importantly all the farmlands, all the factories, or other things, they were totally destroyed by the war. But US, since they were not on the European continent, they were far away from it. That means they can have a very peace and safe life back to their country. And next, of course, US was able to collect war debts after the First World War. They were profiting from the war, or the war profiteer. So I think these are the three main reasons to explain why US they were having a rising influence after the First World War. But how about Japan? Why they were also having the rising influence? First, importantly, is the time when they were allowed to keep major section of former German-controlled Chinese territories. What does it mean by former German-controlled Chinese territories? It's the time when all the European countries, they came to China and tried to change China into their colonies, right? So actually Germany, they were having a lot of places in China as colonies at that time. So since they lose the war, actually Japan, they were allowed to keep the major sections of all those territories in China. And all these territories actually already means all the resources, all the labor force, the cheap labor force, and the cheap resources for Japan to develop their country and develop their economy, right? You can check this map out. You can see in Shandong Peninsula, 1915 to 1917. Actually, this is the major place where it used to control by Germany, but now has turned to Japan's colonies. So what else? Dynamic economic expansion. That means at that time, Japan is already trying to modernize their country. They learn from the European countries, learn from the Industrial Revolution. So that is the reason why they were having Meiji Restoration. After the Meiji Restoration, actually, they were one of the pioneer in Asian countries who tried to modernize themselves. That is the reason why, compared to other countries, especially in Asia, actually Japan was very strong. Okay, so you can check 2 MCs on your worksheet. So please finish those 2 MCs, and this is the end of this part. Bye.